away from it all.
Exactly. You pack a bag, you fly somewhere warm, you sit on a beach, and you think you're stepping completely outside the system for a week of just um, pure simplicity.
Oh, absolutely. That is the dream we're all sold.
But sociologists and economists argue you weren't escaping at all.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it, you were actually performing highly choreographed labor for a massive global machine.
Yeah, it is a slightly terrifying thought.
Oh.
I mean, it really is, but it is entirely accurate.
It's wild.
Behind the resort buffets, the sunset photos, the guided walking tours, there is this massive, incredibly complex problem regarding what we are actually doing when we travel.
Right.
And it's a puzzle that is completely fractured how economists, sociologists, anthropologists, and geographers view the modern world.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you're here with us. Today, we're looking at some seriously fascinating frameworks that chart the hidden dimensions of tourism.
It's a really deep rabbit hole.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to track how the definition of a tourist has shifted. We're going to see how it evolved from a dry, sterile measurement of physical movement all the way into a highly complex postmodern system of identity, power, and well meaning.
And just to set the stage here, it's important to understand that tourism completely defies simple categorization.
Mhm.
There's this brilliant concept in academic circles that refers to the study of tourism as an indiscipline.
And indiscipline, I love that term. It sounds like a rebellious teenager, but what does it actually mean in this context?
So it means tourism fundamentally refuses to fit neatly into the classical rigid borders of science or social science.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like economics looks at tourism and sees a massive financial sector. Sociology looks at it and sees a complex social practice of seeking meaning.
Right. They all want a piece of it.
Exactly. Anthropology treats it as a space where human cultures collide, and geography studies it simply as spatial mobility. Because it borrows from everywhere, it becomes an indiscipline.
That makes a lot of sense.
It is nearly impossible to pin down because it isn't just about travel anymore, it's about the evolution of modern life itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really appreciate how complex and deeply human this concept has become, we first have to look at how rigidly and honestly, how coldly it was originally defined.
Oh, it was incredibly cold.
Right. If we go back to the early 20th century, specifically the 1940s and 50s, we encounter what you could call the era of the spreadsheet tourist.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
If you look at the foundational economic definitions from that era, like Hunziker and Krapp in 1942.
Right, the classic definition.
Yeah, they defined tourism entirely by what it wasn't. To those early institutional thinkers, tourism was simply the sum of phenomena arising from the temporary stay of strangers.
Just strangers existing somewhere.
Exactly. Provided, and this is the crucial caveat, provided that it didn't lead to permanent settlement and wasn't connected to earning a wage.
Temporary movement without the intent to earn money. That's the whole definition.
That is the entire scope of it.
Wow.
And this carries right into the period of massive institutional standardization from the 50s through the 80s. Global organizations, like the UNWTO, needed a way to measure this sudden post-war boom in travel.
Because everyone was suddenly flying.
Right. So they defined a tourist via incredibly strict temporal parameters. Basically, a person traveling outside their usual environment for less than a year.
Reading about these early frameworks drove me a little crazy, I'm not going to lie.
I can imagine.
It's like defining a Michelin star gourmet meal purely by its caloric intake and its digestion time.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. Imagine sitting down to this beautiful artistic plate of food, and the chef says, yes, please enjoy this 600 calorie consumable unit, which will take your body approximately 4 hours to metabolize.
Yeah, that is exactly how the early economists viewed you when you packed your suitcase. You were a metabolic unit of economic consumption.
But is that all we were to them? Just wallets in motion on a spreadsheet? I kept asking myself while reading this, where is the joy in this definition? Where is the escape, the culture, the fundamental human drive to just, see what's over the horizon?
Well, what's fascinating here is why they had those massive blind spots. These early, purely descriptive definitions had a very specific bureaucratic job to do.
They weren't trying to be poetic.
Exactly. They treated tourists as mere statistical units and economic vectors because governments and institutions suddenly needed to measure border crossings.
For taxes and stuff.
Right, they had to calculate tax revenues and plan massive hotel infrastructures. You just can't put joy into a tax revenue model.
No, I guess the IRS doesn't care if you're happy.
No, they don't. So they completely ignored culture, meaning, and the human experience. They treated the destination simply as a sterile container where money changes hands rather than a living place.
But wait, humans aren't just moving wallets, and eventually the academic world had to recognize that.
They did, yeah.
We reach a point in the 1970s where researchers look at all these millions of people crossing oceans and realize people travel to feel something. We are seeking something we lack at home.
Precisely. This is the great sociological turn in understanding travel. The groundbreaking idea here, introduced by Dean McCannell in '76, is that tourism is actually modern man's search for authenticity.
I found the psychological drive behind this so profound. Break down why we suddenly needed to search for authenticity.
Well, think about the reality of modern life for a second. We live in a world of repetitive factory jobs, standard 9 to 5 office hours, and sprawling cookie cutter suburbs.
It's all very monotonous.
Very. And the theory argues that this makes people feel deeply alienated. We feel like our daily life is incredibly inauthentic, like a script we are just reading aloud.
So we try to break out of the script.
Yes, tourism becomes this desperate existential quest. The modern tourist is essentially acting like a medieval pilgrim.
Oh, I like that comparison.
But instead of seeking a holy relic, they're leaving their mundane routine to find meaning, truth, and realness in other cultures and untouched landscapes.
Yeah.
We travel to feel alive again.
And that leads perfectly into the concept of the tourist gaze, which completely changes how we understand the way we look at these untouched landscapes.
Yes, John Urey's concept of the tourist gaze is one of the most crucial concepts to grasp here.
It's so interesting.
It explains that how we view a destination isn't natural, and it certainly isn't spontaneous. Our gaze, literally the way our eyes process a new city or a beach, is culturally constructed.
Like we've been trained how to look at it.
Exactly. Before you even pack your suitcase, your expectations of what a place should look like have been painstakingly built by media, advertisements, travel shows, and history books.
So we already know what we're supposed to see.
Right. We are socially conditioned to view certain things as worth seeing and other things as completely invisible.
It's like we all travel while wearing these invisible cultural VR headsets. In the past, they were programmed by glossy travel brochures, and today they're programmed by highly curated Instagram algorithms.
Oh, Instagram has supercharged this.
Totally. We step off the plane in Paris or Kyoto and think we're spontaneously discovering a place, but we are actually just acting out a pre-written script. We're
Right.
frantically ticking boxes. There's the romantic sunset. There's the authentic street food.
Exactly. And this entirely transforms the tourist from a passive consumer into an active producer of meaning.
Right, we're making the meaning by looking at it.
Yeah, you aren't just looking at a monument. Your gaze is giving that monument its cultural value. And researchers like Eric Cohen began to realize that tourists are not a monolith in how they apply this gaze.
They split tourists up by their core motivations.
Right, there is a massive difference between the person on a massive cruise ship and the person backpacking through a jungle.
A huge difference.
On one end of the spectrum, you have the organized mass tourist. This person wants the familiar comforts of home, just in a slightly warmer foreign climate.
The all-inclusive crowd.
Exactly. They want the air-conditioned tour bus, the familiar food at the hotel buffet,
Yeah.
and a highly choreographed experience where absolutely nothing goes wrong.
And then the other end.
On the completely opposite end, you have the explorer or the drifter. This person actively tries to shatter the tourist bubble. They want to get lost, they want to sleep on the floor of a local's house, and they want to blend into the community.
I want to turn to you for a second, the person listening to this. Think about your last trip. When you were standing in front of a famous monument, did you take a picture of it because the sheer scale and history of it moved you to your core?
That's a tough question.
It really is. Or did you pull out your phone because you subconsciously knew it was the correct picture to take? Did you take it to prove to your friends back home that you were playing the role of the tourist correctly?
It's a very uncomfortable question to ask ourselves.
Oh.
Because it reveals how much of our escape is actually just a performance. And it leads directly to the core tension of modern travel. Because if we are all on a desperate quest for authenticity, if we all want to see the real traditional village, what happens when millions of people demand that exact same real experience at the exact same time?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because you end up destroying the very thing you traveled thousands of miles to see.
Precisely. You run headfirst into the paradox of authenticity. The very act of seeking authenticity almost inevitably destroys it.
Because you can't have millions of people in a tiny village.
No, you can't. Think about the mechanics of how this works on the ground. When a remote village realizes that foreign tourists will pay good money to see their traditional daily life, they understandably start putting on a show.
The concept of staged authenticity.
Right. Sociologists talk about this in terms of a front stage and a backstage.
Like a theater.
Exactly like a theater. The locals might literally change out of their jeans and t-shirts into traditional historical garb right before the tour bus arrives.
Oh.
They perform an ancient dance for the cameras, sell some crafts, and then when the bus leaves, they change back into their regular clothes and check their smartphones. The culture becomes a living museum, a performance put on specifically for the tourist gaze.
We also see this massive standardization happen, the McDonaldization of tourism, where experiences become fast, predictable, and ultimately superficial.
Yeah, George Ritzer's work on McDonaldization perfectly applies here.
You go to a massive global chain hotel in Bali, and the lobby, the service, and the food feel exactly like the chain hotel in Cancun or Dubai.
But then postmodern theory enters the debate and flips this entire concept of authenticity on its head.
Oh, this is the Wang paper from 99, right?
Yes, Ning Wang. He introduces the idea of existential authenticity.
Explain this one because this part of the theory really caught my attention.
So, the argument here is that objective authenticity, meaning whether the local dance you're watching has been performed for 500 years or whether it was invented last Tuesday by the hotel entertainment director,
Right.
doesn't actually matter. What matters is the feeling of reality it creates within the tourist.
So the feeling is the product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The authenticity isn't in the history of the object. It is subjective. It's existential. If you feel like you are having a real authentic moment, then for all intents and purposes, it is authentic.
Okay, I want to push back on this, or at least fiercely debate the ethics of it, because this completely messes with how we value culture.
Let's hear it.
Let's say I take my family to a luau in Hawaii. Structurally, I know it is completely staged authenticity. The dancers are paid employees, the food is catered by a massive corporation, and the tiki torches are lit with hidden gas lines.
Right. It's an absolute show.
But if I am sitting there with my family, the sun is going down, the music is playing, and I feel a profound, genuine moment of joy, relaxation, and connection to the people I love, doesn't that matter?
Of course it does.
If my feeling of connection was real, isn't the postmodern theory right? Who cares if the stage is structurally fake if my human emotion is genuinely authentic?
This raises an important question. And the theory doesn't necessarily say your joy is invalid. In fact, it validates that your experience is authentic in that existential sense.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
No, you had a real moment with your family. The danger, from a broader sociological standpoint, isn't that you enjoyed the luau. The danger is what happens to the host culture.
What do you mean?
To provide you that emotional backdrop, the host culture is forced to freeze itself into a caricature.
Ah, right. The culture becomes a commodity. It becomes a product on a shelf, packaged simply to trigger my emotional response.
Exactly. The local population stops evolving naturally and instead gets locked into playing a subservient, performative role for wealthy visitors.
That's a heavy price to pay for my vacation.
It is. Which means we can no longer just analyze the tourists' internal feelings. We have to zoom out. We have to look at the global power dynamics.
Right.
And this brings us to the most contemporary and arguably the darkest phase of understanding travel. We have to ask the hard questions. Who actually gets to travel? And who pays the price for our authentic experiences?
My realization about my own subjective privilege sitting at that hypothetical luau perfectly transitions us here.
Yeah, it really does.
Because when you look at modern spatial mobility, it pulls absolutely no punches. We have this romanticized view of a borderless world, but that is a massive illusion.
It is entirely an illusion. Sociologist Sigmund Bauman has this concept of liquid modernity, which draws a sharp, almost painful distinction between two types of mobile people in our modern world.
The tourist and the vagabond.
Yes,
Yeah, the contrast between those two is incredibly heavy to think about.
it fundamentally redefines how we view a passport. The tourist, the first category, moves freely, safely, and entirely by choice.
They're the ones everyone wants.
Exactly. They're celebrated. Entire nations build infrastructure to welcome them, cater to their tastes, and make their movement frictionless.
And the vagabond.
Then you have the vagabond, or the forced migrant. They move not for leisure, but because their home has become unlivable, whether due to economic collapse, conflict, or climate change.
They're just trying to survive.
Right. And they are restricted, policed, stopped at borders, and generally unwanted. This theory reveals that in our modern global system, mobility is not just a physical act of moving from point A to point B.
It's a privilege.
It is a profound privilege
Yeah.
and one of the starkest markers of global inequality.
And that inequality isn't just about who gets to cross borders. It's actually baked deep into the economics of the tourist destinations themselves.
Right.
There's a concept called leakage that really exposes the financial reality of global travel.
Yes, Stephen Britton's work on dependency theory and leakage is a vital economic mechanism to understand.
Let me try an analogy here.
Go for it.
We have this pervasive idea that tourism is inherently good for developing nations. You bring in foreign money, you build an economy, you lift people up.
That's the story we're told, yeah.
Yeah, but the concept of leakage shows us that it's actually like a financial leaky bucket. Imagine you pour 100 gallons of water representing tourist dollars into a local village's bucket.
Okay.
You think you are hydrating the local economy, but because the bucket is actually owned by a foreign corporation, 80 gallons instantly leak out of the hole in the bottom and flow right back to Wall Street or London.
That is a perfect, albeit depressing, analogy. Think about the actual mechanics of an all-inclusive resort in the global south.
Okay, let's break it down.
You, the tourist, pay $2,000 online, but you pay it to a massive resort chain headquartered in a wealthy northern country. You fly there on a foreign-owned airline.
Right.
When you get to the buffet, you eat imported food because the tourists demand familiar brands.
Yeah.
The only money that actually stays in the local village is the $5 a day paid to the local maid or the busboy.
That is so bleak.
It is. The real wealth is systematically siphoned away, creating a neo-colonial dynamic where the developing nation simply provides cheap labor and scenic backgrounds for multinational corporations.
So, what does this all mean for us today? We've gone from the 1940s, tracking temporary physical movement on a tax spreadsheet, to realizing tourism is a mechanism of global power.
A massive shift.
Which brings me to a very modern phenomenon, digital nomadism. I have to ask, are digital nomads just the newest iteration of this exact power imbalance? Is it just wrapping global privilege in the trendy aesthetic guise of remote work?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes. It absolutely represents a new, highly potent form of unequal spatial mobility.
I knew it.
Let's look at the mechanics of being a digital nomad. They earn their salary in a strong currency, like dollars or euros, but they intentionally choose to live in a country with a much weaker currency.
Geo-arbitrage, they call it.
Exactly. This allows them to live like kings, but it fundamentally distorts the local economy. They drive up local housing prices, gentrify entire neighborhoods, and often utilize tax loopholes so they aren't contributing to the local infrastructure they are using.
They're just extracting value.
Yes, they are the ultimate expression of Bowman's privileged tourist, moving entirely by choice, utilizing global networks, but remaining largely untethered from the local daily consequences of their presence.
And those local consequences are becoming utterly impossible to ignore. There is a framework called the life cycle model of a destination, and it maps out exactly how this ends.
Butler's life cycle model, yes.
It tracks how a beautiful destination is discovered, explodes in popularity, and then essentially collapses under the weight of its own success.
It is a tragedy that plays out over and over again. The life cycle model has very clear stages. It starts with discovery. A few adventurous backpackers find a quiet, untouched beach or a historic town.
The explorers we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Then comes local involvement, where the locals start opening small cafes or guest houses. But then comes the development and consolidation phases.
The big money moves in.
Right. The multinational chains notice the popularity. They swoop in, build mega resorts, and pave the roads. Suddenly, the local economy is entirely dependent on tourism, but the locals themselves are priced out of their own homes.
Which leads to the final stage stagnation and decline.
Exactly. The destination becomes overcrowded, polluted, and loses the very charm that made it special in the first place.
And then the tourists just leave.
They do. The wealthy tourists get bored and leave for the next undiscovered spot, leaving the local community to deal with the environmental and cultural wreckage.
It's like locusts.
It really is. We're seeing this life cycle reach its breaking point in real time right now. Look at the protests in Venice, where the cruise ships physically erode the foundations of the city.
Or Kyoto.
Yes, Kyoto,
Yep.
where locals are actively trying to ban tourists from certain districts because the cultural fabric of the city is being torn apart by the sheer volume of visitors. Over-tourism isn't just an annoyance. It is a structural crisis.
It is truly staggering to look back at the journey we've taken in this deep dive. The mission was to see how the definition of tourism has shifted, and wow, it is almost unrecognizable from where we started.
Oh, completely. We started with the bureaucratic mindset of the 1940s, telling it that tourist is just a human tax vector staying somewhere temporarily without earning a wage.
Just a data point.
Exactly.
And we ended up realizing that tourism is not just a relaxing vacation, it is a highly complex, multi layered system of mobility, meaning, and massive global power.
Yeah.
And the wildest part is that it directly involves you, the listener, every single time you pack a suitcase. Your internal desire for escape, your psychological search for authenticity, the economic footprint of your chosen resort, the cultural impact of your Instagram photos, it is all intimately connected to this massive global web.
It fundamentally changes how you look at a boarding pass, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's no longer just a ticket to a beach. It's an admission ticket into a global phenomenon.
Mm.
Your physical presence shapes both your own identity and the destiny of the host culture you are visiting.
It really does. It's a massive responsibility. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final lingering question to mull over.
Okay.
We've talked extensively today about the paradox of authenticity, how seeking the real thing often turns it into a staged performance. And we've discussed the massive environmental and cultural footprint our physical travel leaves behind on the places we claim to love.
So true.
So think about this. If our physical travel inevitably alters, standardizes, or damages the very authentic spaces we desperately seek, will the ultimate ethical and authentic vacation of the future have to be completely virtual?
Oh, wow.
Could strapping on a headset and leaving absolutely zero physical footprint be the only way to truly leave a beautiful place intact?
That is a fascinating and maybe slightly terrifying thought to end on.
Yeah.
If the only way to save a place is to never actually go there.
Something to ponder next time you are scrolling through travel reels, wishing you were somewhere else. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gives you an entirely new lens through which to view your next journey, however you choose to take it. Stay curious,